On September 17, 2023, officers responded to a routine welfare check in Romeoville, Illinois, that would quickly unravel into a grim discovery. Upon arrival, the house appeared eerily still. All lights were off except for one faint glow from a room in the southwest corner. It was here that the first grim discovery was made. 2 deceased dogs lying lifeless on opposite ends of the kitchen floor. Their presence raised immediate alarms, prompting officers to determine exigent circumstances and enter the home through the unlocked back door. For privacy reasons, the footage inside the home has been redacted. Inside, the silence was shattered by the unmistakable signs of violence. Officers moved cautiously through the house, clearing each room. In the living room, where it met the hallway, they discovered the body of an adult male lying face up in a pool of blood, later identified as Alberto Rolon, Zoraida's husband. He had suffered fatal injuries to the head, the result of apparent gunfire. Further into the home, in the southeast bedroom, officers encountered a chilling scene. The door had been forcibly kicked in, with a large footprint and splintered wood around the lock confirming it. Behind the door lay the body of an adult female, later identified as Zoraida Bartolome, her life violently taken. Nearby, their 2 young boys, Diego and Adriel Roland, were also found deceased, their bodies bearing the unmistakable signs of the same brutality. As the officers exited the house, the weight of the tragedy was clear. The home, once a sanctuary for a family, had become a scene of unimaginable horror. Based on the evidence on Zoraida and Alberto's phones found at the crime scene, police visit Ermelina Paloma and Nathaniel Huey's residence. At this point, police only know that Zoraida had been having an affair with Nathaniel Huey, Ermelinda's boyfriend. Nathaniel attempts to convince Ermelinda to speak with officers on the patio because it's right in front of their Ring camera. Officers want to get Ermelinda's side of the story without Nathaniel being there, and she eventually agrees to speak with them privately in their patrol cars. Officers arrive at a nearby park to discuss her involvement with Zoraida and her family.
Ermelinda,
yeah.
how long have you known Huey?
Since probably 2015.
Okay. Why are you scared of him?
Oh, I'm not scared of him.
Okay. Why are you scared right now?
Because when I called him, because I was scared, I didn't know where he was.
Okay.
He said, someone's following me.
Okay.
So I called. And then I heard him say, why are you following me? Do you want to search the car? And then someone said to him, there are messages from you, and it's because her husband found out you were having an affair. And I didn't know that.
You didn't know what?
That he was having an affair.
Okay. When did you find that out? Right now?
Just right now.
Okay. When's the last time that he had an affair? Because I know this is not the first time.
No, it's not.
Okay. When's the last time you knew he had an affair?
When we first started dating.
2015?
2015 to maybe 17. You know what? His son was born and he said, I'm not having any more affairs. I'm not cheating on you.
Okay.
Stupidly.
Okay.
Do I know if he stopped? No, I don't know.
Okay, so the last time you
Hold
knew?
on.
Okay.
So then I had a party at my house.
Mm-hmm.
And I fell asleep, and apparently he said someone kissed him, and that was thought. So I don't know, maybe it was 2019.
Okay.
And he said, no, she kissed me, and that was it. Come on. We're all drunk.
You know him better than we do, so.
Anyways.
Ermelinda was putting on a show for the officers. In fact, she was the mastermind behind the whole thing. For years, Nathaniel was cheating on her, and she only grew more jealous. After successfully retrieving messages from texting apps off of their iCloud accounts, investigators found out that Ermelinda was posing as a fake hacker and catfishing Nathaniel into believing that Zoraida was a mole in their cartel. She gathered images from the internet to impersonate others, put a spy location app on his phone, and even used online translators to pose as someone fluent in Bulgarian. Ermelinda, filled with jealousy, manipulated and catfished Nathaniel somehow into killing an entire family. investigators pay a visit to Nathaniel at his workplace. They are fully aware that the evidence they needed would be on Nathaniel's phone. If he was innocent, he would have no issues giving up his phone. However, that was not the case. Nathaniel agrees to do a cheek swab for DNA analysis. Then he pays a visit to the police station and allows them to dump his phone. Even though he erased all of the messages first, the officers were able to retrieve them later on. From what police gathered from his phone, Nathaniel and Ermelinda meticulously orchestrated the murder of Zoraida in a chilling display of premeditation and calculation with Ermelinda's fake character. Their plan began with extensive research into Zoraida's home, mapping out its layout and analyzing the neighborhood for security cameras. They discovered that the house behind Zoraida's was vacant, offering an opportunity to avoid detection. In an effort to stage the murder as a botched burglary, Ermelinda instructed Nathaniel to create damage to the scene, making it appear as though teenagers were responsible. Ermelinda drove the vehicle to the scene as planned, while Nathaniel focused on their horrifying mission. Ermelinda's Malibu arrived in the area of Concord Avenue and drove past the house several times. The aftermath of their plan was equally cold and calculated. They intended to take Zoraida's and Alberto's phones to disrupt any evidence trails and burn their clothing afterward in Nathaniel's backyard. However, a storm on the night of the murders likely thwarted their attempt to destroy the evidence. In the early hours of Wednesday, September 20th, 2023, Ermelinda was reported missing by her family. Once they knew they were under investigation for the murders, Nathaniel confessed to his mother. Ermelinda was entered into the nationwide law enforcement database as endangered, armed, and dangerous, with a note indicating she was with murder suspect Nathaniel in his GMC vehicle. Catoosa Police Captain Swarer observed the two approaching a black GMC Yukon parked at a Walmart in Catoosa, Oklahoma. Security footage confirmed they appeared calm, walking together willingly with no signs of distress. As Captain Swarer activated her emergency lights to investigate, the SUV fled, striking another vehicle before crashing into a concrete median. The impact trapped the driver's side doors, and as the vehicle caught fire, Captain Swarer heard 2 gunshots. Nathaniel, found dead in the driver's seat, sustained 2 gunshot wounds to the head, one non-fatal, the other self-inflicted, as confirmed by autopsy. Ermelinda, with a single gunshot wound to the back of her head from Nathaniel, was transported to St. Francis Hospital, where she later died.
18-year-old Hannah Elizabeth Graham was in her second year of college at the University of Virginia, out for the evening at Charlottesville's downtown pedestrian mall, meeting friends and having drinks, a night any college student would look forward to. But Hannah ended up heavily intoxicated and all alone, that is, until she met a man. Her last words overheard by a passerby on the street were, "I'm not getting in the car with you." And then she was gone. Hannah Graham was born in England, a daughter of John and Sue Graham and the baby sister of James Graham. At the age of 5, the family moved to the United States, where they made their new home in the Stratford Landing area of Fairfax County, Virginia. A charming neighborhood once known as River Farm. The previous landowner was George Washington. Hannah came from a solid family. She was a happy, bright girl who loved life. Hannah was smart, athletic, musically inclined, and all around a great person, bursting with vigor. Until she met Jesse Leroy Matthew Jr. Then the world would go dark and terrifying. In every photo of Hannah Graham, she's always smiling. From childhood to her teenage years, she was full of life. She emitted positivity and enthusiasm and an energy that would light up a room. To those who knew her, she had the potential to take the world by storm. Hannah had an amazing future ahead of her, if not cut short by an evil that too often inflicts the world with its selfish degradation. On September 12, 2014, at around 9:30 p.m., Hannah left her residence at the Grand Mark apartment complex to meet up with friends. They would then be heading to Charlottesville's Fig restaurant around 10:48 p.m. for drinks. Afterwards, Hannah headed to Camden Plaza Apartments on 14th Street to attend a party. At one point, she said she wasn't feeling well and was going to leave. A friend had offered to walk her home, but she refused. Her own apartment building was within walking distance from the Camden Plaza, but when she left the party around midnight, she went in the opposite direction towards the Tempo restaurant located several blocks away. Hannah was captured on surveillance videos as she walked past businesses on her way to the downtown Charlottesville Mall where Tempo was located. This would come into play later. It was then technically September the 13th at 12:44 a.m. At 12:56 a.m., she sent a text to one of her friends telling her that she was lost and that she didn't feel well. Hannah was allegedly quite intoxicated at the time she sent the text. Had Hannah gotten turned around by accident, or had the alcohol intoxication caused her marked confusion? Earlier that evening, in another area of town, 32-year-old Jesse Matthew, a part-time taxi driver and operating room technician, had headed to the Lazy Parrot for drinks. Afterwards, he began bar hopping through downtown, making several rude and unwanted advances towards women. Those same women would later report that Matthew had stepped over the line with them. After a period of time went by, Matthew and Graham's paths would eventually cross. At first, Matthew let her walk by without drawing attention to himself, and then he saw his moment. He turned and followed her. With Hannah's heavy intoxication, her alertness to her surroundings would have been a little slow, a very dangerous thing considering she was all alone. Surveillance footage seemed to show that Hannah had been wandering around as though disoriented to her time and place. Matthew came up beside her, put his arm around her, and they were now walking together towards the Tempo restaurant. Matthews went inside and bought 2 drinks, and there is some contradiction on whether Hannah was in the bar or outside at a table, and if she was actually served. The last text that Hannah sent to a friend stated, "I got stuck down though," which made no sense at all to her friend. It was 1 a.m., and it would be the last communication to anyone from Hannah. Had an alleged predator just claimed his next victim? On September 14th, Hannah's friends were very concerned about her and reported her missing. They had last communicated with her in the early morning hours around 1 a.m. on the 13th. Now, friends and family could make no contact with her at all, and no one had seen her. Hannah was not the type of person who would go without informing someone. She was a responsible person, and everyone's concern grew deeper by the minute. Police immediately started a search for Hannah, and the state and federal law enforcement were called in as soon as possible. Hannah's disappearance had hit a nerve. There had been several other females in the past who had gone missing throughout Charlottesville and in Albemarle County. So Hannah's case would gain national attention rather quickly. They needed to find her, and soon. With thorough investigation and collection of surveillance videos around town, law enforcement were able to put together a timeline of Hannah's steps throughout the night up until the last time she was seen and who she was seen with. Hundreds gathered at the University of Virginia to show their support for Hannah Graham and her family during a candlelight vigil, and many of them would also show support through a community search for Hannah. They wanted to do anything they could to help find her. She had touched the lives of many and cared about them as well. Now it was their turn to do the same for her. Jesse Leroy Matthew Jr., known to others as LJ, was raised in poverty, bullied at school, had an issue with stuttering and learning disabilities. Yet he grew up and persevered through every tough turn and earned a full football scholarship to Liberty University. But there was allegedly a dark side to Matthew. He was accused of rape of a female student in 2002 at the university. He quickly left Liberty and enrolled at Christopher Newport University in 2003. But once again, his dark side loomed. There, he was accused of another sexual assault. The victim was not identified. After he left school for good, he just bounced around from job to job. One of those was being a taxi driver in the Charlottesville, Virginia area, and he knew the area well and how to get around. In 2005, a young woman was attacked and raped as she walked home from a store in Fairfax County. It was alleged that he threatened to kill her unless she let him do whatever he wanted. She was left alive and was taken for medical treatment along with having a rape kit done. Investigators were able to lift DNA at the crime scene, build a profile, but the DNA did not come back to any known suspects on law enforcement's database. The woman feared for her life so much that she chose to move back to her home in India. Oddly, family and friends would say that Matthew was a kind-hearted soul willing to help anyone. He was a gentle person with a big heart, they said. Even women he had dated in the past said of their relationships that he was charming and tender. Yet here was Matthew being accused of previous assaults, at least 12 women in all that were known of. It just didn't make sense. One of Matthew's girlfriends even told detectives that he had a rough childhood, and by rough she meant he had been sexually abused. Jesse was sexually abused by at least 3 different individuals throughout his elementary school years. One individual in particular raped him on several occasions and forced him to keep it a secret. I have no doubt this repeated sexual trauma during his developmental years had played a key role in the allegations against him. It was never fully confirmed by either family or friends, but Matthew alleged that the sexual assault had occurred against him while he was growing up. If it were true, it might just explain his Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde persona, going from a nice guy to something else entirely. Had a nature versus nurture issue influenced Matthew's downward spiral towards his own undoing? Matthew's own father drank and was absent from his life at times, and had even been arrested in 2006 for indecent exposure. What kind of example was his father setting for this young man? Could these things have impacted his developmental years, possibly evolving into a serial rapist murderer? Was Jesse lashing out against his past, or giving in to a drive that had emerged from deep within himself? On September 19th, detectives retained a search warrant for Jesse Matthews, labeled as the back-to-school killer's apartment. A cell phone with a missing SIM card was recovered, as were men's shorts with DNA. When it was examined, it contained both sperm and DNA from Matthew, but also DNA from Hannah. Her DNA was located also on the passenger side door of Matthew's vehicle. A second warrant was issued the next day to search Matthew's apartment again. Investigators said that he was not charged yet in connection with Hannah's disappearance, but he was the last person to be seen with her on the night she disappeared. With the second search completed, the investigators would leave with several evidence bags in tow. Some of the items were Matthew's Galaxy phone, bedding, pillows, more clothes, a toothbrush, hair samples, a wallet, a cigar butt, and fibers that they had collected. With a third search warrant, investigators collected a pair of white shorts and a maroon-colored shirt, along with a towel with a reddish-brown stain on it. Matthew owned a orange Chrysler Sebring, which was also seized. Investigators called in a bloodhound unit that located Hannah's scent at the rear entrance to Matthew's apartment, the passenger door of his vehicle, and a nearby dumpster. September the 20th, Matthew shows up at the Charlottesville PD asking for a lawyer, but refusing to speak to police about Hannah. It was said that he left the PD, got into a car, and left at a high rate of speed. Investigators in turn tailed him, but he was able to elude them, and a nationwide manhunt went into play. It was also revealed that Matthew had gotten a new driver's license and also had withdrawn most of his money from the bank. A wanted poster was issued for Matthew, described as a black male in his early 30s with dreadlocks and a goatee, just under 6 feet tall and over 260 pounds. He was last seen wearing a white shirt and black jeans, possibly in the possession of his sister's blue Nissan. It was disclosed that Matthew's family had pleaded with him to assist the detectives with any information he was aware of in the disappearance of Hannah Graham. His aunt, named Alice Fletcher, told police that the family were trying to do all they could to help Hannah's family find their missing daughter. On September 24th, Matthew was spotted on a Texas beach by the Galveston County Sheriff's Department. With Matthew's own vehicle impounded, he had used his sister's blue 1997 Nissan Sentra and was now staying on the beach in a tent. A passerby had recognized Matthew from the news reports and called 911. He was detained by law enforcement officers and extradition was filed. Charlottesville investigators would head to Texas to pick up Matthew. He was officially listed as a suspect in the disappearance of Hannah, and the reward for leads for the discovery of Hannah was set at $100,000. Matthew was taken to the Charlottesville-Albemarle Regional Jail, where he would be held without bond. The search for Hannah Graham would continue. On October the 18th, skeletal remains were found at a property off of Old Lynchburg Road in Albemarle County. The location was in a densely wooded area behind a vacant residence. Investigators expanded the search area to find the rest of the remains. Crop top and jeans that looked like the same ones Hannah had been wearing on the night of her disappearance were found nearby. The top was inside out and the pants had one leg inside out. A watch was also found. What wasn't located were the undergarments, shoes, or a cell phone. A nearby resident told investigators that on the morning of September the 13th, they had seen Matthew's car backed into an access road that goes behind the property. The gate was closed and no one was in the vehicle. Investigators learned that Matthew was very familiar with this location. By driving a taxi in the area for the last several years, he would know where the remote and hidden areas would be. The remains were transported to the chief medical examiner, Dr. Kevin Whaley in Richmond, who in turn performed an autopsy and determined that the death occurred from homicidal violence. The most likely cause of death was strangulation or suffocation. Further studies showed two other things. The first was there had been two perimortem, meaning at or near the time of death, nasal fractures. The second was that the victim was definitely that of Hannah Elizabeth Graham. When DNA evidence was collected, investigators were able to connect Matthew to Hannah Graham's murder. February 10th of 2015, Matthew is formally charged with Hannah's murder. The charge would be first-degree murder and abduction of the victim with the intent to defile. Prosecutors would seek the death penalty for Jesse Matthew.